as a mental health professional, I know you have dealt with attendance issues with your clients like I have. And so I want to talk about that today because attendance issues can be frustrating for us as therapists to deal with. It can be uncomfortable to address with the client, and it can be really disruptive to the therapeutic work. And so today I'm going to talk to you about exactly what I do to address attendance issues. I'm going to talk about attendance policies and also really important things that you should be thinking of when it comes to addressing attendance in your practice. So let's get started. Now, let's first talk about what this could look like because when I say attendance issues, that's pretty vague. So let me give you some examples really quickly about what this actually would look like. So when I say attendance issues, I'm talking about you have someone who maybe is not showing up to therapy consistently. They've had a lot of absences, late cancellations, or just flat out no shows to therapy. Or you have someone who is continuing to show up late or needing to reschedule last minute. And so their therapy is disrupted because it's either having to be cut short, they have to leave early, they have to reschedule last minute, or they have to start late for one reason or another. So it really can look like a lot of different things over an extended period of time or a very short amount of time, depending upon what the severity of the attendance issues look like. Because let's face it, attendance in therapy is really important. How am I supposed to help you as a therapist if you are not going to show up? Like, I don't know, right? We have to be able to meet regularly, consistently as the treatment plan lays out so that we can work on things. And so if someone is not showing up for therapy, then it one can be disruptive, but two, are we really having as good of an opportunity to work on and address your goals? Or does it feel like we're kind of struggling in that area because we were on a good track and then you missed 3 appointments in a row? Or I thought we were going to meet weekly, but it seems like now we've only been meeting every 2 to 3 weeks. And so your goals are having a harder time being reached or achieved because so much time is happening in between our appointments, or we're just not having the time to devote to the appointments. I mean, being in therapy is a commitment, and so attendance is required, and good attendance is required for people to really get the most out of their therapy experience. So when I talk with a client from the get go, I explain to them, listen, this is my attendance policy, and this is why attendance is so important because you've got X, Y, or Z goals. And in order for us to really reach them, we need to be working on them consistently. Or, you have a lot of symptoms that we need to really work on trying to get managed. And so it's going to be really hard to do that if I only see you starting out every 2 to 3 weeks. Like you might feel like that our sessions are more just kind of catching up and not really having a lot of time to get into the heart of doing the work because so much can happen in between appointments. So I tell people from the get go, listen, therapy is a commitment. Your attendance is really important. And when you're struggling with attendance, this can be disruptive. It can delay you reaching your goals, and a lot of other issues can come up as well. Because between you and I, as therapists, when someone is not making their appointments, it can feel really disruptive to the therapeutic experience, but also we as therapists are not immune to getting frustrated. And if you have someone who is frequently canceling last minute or they're needing to consistently reschedule and you feel like you're really trying to make it work and bending your schedule, working later, working on your day off to try to accommodate that, and they continue to still not meet or respect the attendance policy, naturally, as a therapist, you might have some feelings about that. And we want to do everything we can to not be frustrated at our clients. But the reality is that sometimes that can just naturally feel frustrating if I get to a place where I feel like, man, you're not really respecting my time, or I'm really trying to bend over backwards to work with your schedule needs, and then you're still canceling anyways after I've rearranged things or gotten childcare. And so it's something that actually can be disruptive to the relationship as well, not just working on or reaching goals. And all of these things are so important to having a good therapeutic experience and for us to be able to provide good therapeutic services. And so this is why attendance is so important because if we are not able to work on things, how am I supposed to help you? So, how do you even begin to address this with a client? Well, let's first look at your attendance policy because as a therapist, our job from the get go is to make sure that the client knows what to expect. And so, if I am expecting them to attend weekly, if I am expecting them to show up on time, if I'm expecting them to do something to notify me if they're going to be late, then I do need to set that expectation from the get go with them and make it very clear that these are my expectations when it comes to working together. And we're both agreeing to both do that and make sure that we're both committed to showing up and doing the work. Because as therapists, I also have to adhere to that attendance policy. So me showing up on time is just as important as the client showing up on time. Or if I need to reschedule for any reason, doing that in a specific window that gives them the opportunity to reschedule and still get seen and to feel like that I'm being respectful of their time is so important, just like I want that respect to be given back to me. So when it comes to your attendance policy, first and foremost, we want to make sure that we have an attendance policy and that it clearly outlines what the expectations are. And you can set this for yourself. Obviously, if you work at an agency, then they may already have one, and that's already something that the clients are being provided. But if you are on your own or you have your own practice, you get to really tailor this to what works best for you and feels most respectful for you and your time. And so I encourage you to look at your attendance policy and really think about, how do I want to convey to the clients what my expectations are, and outline that very clearly in the attendance policy. And if you don't have an attendance policy, this is your reminder that you need one. This is so, so important. You need an attendance policy. There needs to be something in writing that acknowledges how to show up, when to show up, what to do if they can't show up, so that the client knows what the expectations are and that you also have that to fall back on if there are attendance issues. Because if you don't have an attendance policy and there is an issue with attendance, when you go to talk with the client about that, you're really starting from scratch in that moment, because there's nothing for you to fall back on to say, listen, as we agreed, these are the expectations. You're already made aware of them. And so let's look at this and talk about what's happening for you that's making it challenging to adhere to this attendance policy. You would have to start from scratch and say, okay, well, let's start now and talk about what we agree on is the policy, and then give them time to respect that moving forward. So make sure that you have an attendance policy and that it clearly outlines what your expectations are, and you can decide what that looks like. But there should be something in that attendance policy stating what to do if they aren't able to attend for any reason, how you are expecting them to notify you. Is that email? Is that giving you a phone call? What is the window of time in which they need to notify you by? What to do in case of an emergency? How do you want to be notified in that instance? And of course, if there's any fee attached to them not coming, that needs to be outlined clearly so that they're aware of what they're going to be charged. And all of these things need to be in the attendance policy. And I would even say in the attendance policy, somewhere near the bottom, there should also be something written that explains what happens if the attendance policy isn't adhered to. So, could this result in a discharge? Could this result to being referred to a different treatment provider? Like, what does that look like? So that again, if they continue to miss appointments, it's no surprise to anybody that I have to enforce this attendance policy, and this is what we already agreed upon. It's really not fair for the client if you are springing on them an attendance policy while they've already been in treatment and they haven't known what the expectation is, and then you're just randomly expecting them to adhere to it. Like, there should be a conversation really from the jump about, this is the expectation, and we're both equal parties agreeing to adhere to this, because I, as a therapist, also need to be here and be respectful of your time as the client, right? So that we have this mutual understanding from the get go that this is what it's going to look like. Now, I threw out the word late fee, so let's spend a little bit talking about that, because I see mixed reviews on this. And I am of the mindset that as therapists, our time deserves to be respected, and that having a late or no show fee attached, which is already agreed upon by you and the client, is a good policy to have. I mean, let's face it, if I go to a doctor's appointment or I take my child to the pediatrician and last minute I cancel or I don't give them at least 24 hours notice, I am responsible for that office fee. Doctors do this all the time. And so, as mental health professionals, I don't think we should be any different. Our time deserves to be respected. And when you put this fee associated with an importance of letting me know in a timely manner that you're not going to be there, it also can actually encourage people to keep you more in the loop and to be more mindful and respectful of your time, because most people don't want to be charged a no show or late fee if they can help it. And you will see, if you have one, people try to make sure that they don't have to pay it. So this is actually a good thing to help you protect your time. I've seen some therapists really struggle with having a late fee, and I encourage you to really think about if that is you, why you're struggling with that, and what is coming up for you in the moment, because your time deserves to be respected. And if someone is going to agree to an appointment and then they forget, it's really not on you. And at that moment, you can't get that time back. You can't put someone else in that spot. And yes, while it might free you up an hour to do a training or administrative work or whatever, there's no planning involved in that. You can't plan ahead to do something else. And so you're allowed to say, hey, listen, I totally understand that you can't make it or that you forgot, but I do have this fee attached that you already agreed to because you missed your appointment. So if there are some things coming up for you while you're watching this video and you're like, this is just so cringy, this is so uncomfortable, please reflect on that. Please seek some consultation or supervision, because I genuinely think that something is happening for you in the moment that could stand to be looked at and addressed, so that this doesn't feel like such a terrible thing. Because you having specific guidelines about your attendance and you making sure that you enforce that really is something that can help you as a therapist feel better and show up better for clients. It can set the tone for the type of relationship and respect for one another. And it actually can help you do better therapeutic work. And I have seen that myself. So, sidebar here, really quickly. When I first opened my practice 4 years ago now, I did not have any policy in place on what to do if you needed to cancel or reschedule an appointment. And very quickly, I found out that things come up and people oftentimes do need to cancel or reschedule for one reason or another for things that are outside of their control. So my kid gets sick and is at home, or I'm sick myself, or my car broke down, I can't make it to my appointment, or my internet's out, I can't do my virtual appointment. And these things just happen. Life happens. But what I found out really quickly was that because I had no policy in place, I was being given no notice, which was leaving big gaps in my schedule. I was just starting out, and so I had nothing to protect me financially, and I didn't have a fee attached to it. And so I was losing money. I started to feel frustrated at certain clients because I would notice they're probably calling to cancel, or I just got an email from them and they have an appointment later today. I already know before I open it that they're going to cancel. And I could feel myself not liking how I was feeling, even before knowing for a fact that they were going to cancel or need to reschedule. And I noticed that I just didn't like that. I didn't want to feel that way. And it wasn't because my clients were doing anything wrong. It was because I was feeling internally like, man, they didn't value my time and they didn't respect it, which is why they didn't mind to tell me very, very last minute that, oh, by the way, they knew they couldn't do the appointment today. Well, gosh, why didn't you let me know that earlier? Right. Like now I'm frustrated. And so I took that as an opportunity to really look at my attendance policy and what was lacking and beef it up. And I actually personally imposed a no show fee. And mine specifically says if for any reason you cancel less than 24 hours from the start time of your appointment, then you're subjected to a no show fee. And I waive that no show fee at my personal discretion if there's a true like life threatening emergency. But I tell people that from the get go, like there's very extraordinary circumstances where I would not impose that fee. But if something just pops up or you get called into work or you forget, like that fee still applies. And I have not had that same feeling of frustration pop up for me since I imposed that fee and started being very specific about what my attendance expectations were, and having clients understand and actually sign an attendance policy agreement from the very first appointment when they do that intake. So I know this can create just a lot of discomfort and frustration if you don't have a policy. And so I really encourage you to look at what your attendance policy is. And then this next tip is make sure you're enforcing the policy that you have set. Now, if you work for yourself, you can again have whatever attendance policy that you want. And so if you want to use your discretion, that's absolutely fine. I just really caution you to let that be the exception and not the norm or the rule, because I have seen this really backfire. And really, at that point, it's on the therapist. If you're not going to enforce the attendance policy that you set, that's not on the client. I can't look at the client and go, why aren't you respecting this? why aren't you following this attendance policy if I haven't been enforcing that, which might be uncomfortable, but I want to make sure that I do that. And so, what I do when I notice that attendance issues are happening or someone has to cancel below that 24-hour mark, because that's my policy, is I specifically remind them and let them know that. And I typically try to give them a reschedule option, because if they can fit a hole somewhere else in my schedule, then I personally will waive that no show fee of like, hey, because I understand things happen. I know you can't meet today at 1 o'clock. Could you by chance meet later? Because I do have a 6 o'clock open. And so if you can change that, I'm happy to meet you then. Or even if it's the next day, if I have something, a cancellation the next day pop up, I will say, like, hey, could you by chance see me tomorrow morning instead? If you can guarantee that you can come to tomorrow's appointment, I will waive that no show fee. So you can do that, absolutely. But also, if you don't have it, you don't have it, and that's okay too. But you're allowed to be able to use your discretion there. I just caution you, make it the exception and not the rule, because if you have an attendance policy, then it's clearly there for a reason. And it's probably going to be helpful if people adhere to that attendance policy. So let's figure out how to make sure that we're having those conversations. And if I have a client that is saying, hey, I have to reschedule and I don't have the time to reschedule them, or I just don't have the availability, then, and it's under that 24-hour mark. And I've heard some people say 48 hours, or, if you have a Monday appointment, it's the Friday before by close of business, or whatever your policy is. If someone tells me that they need to cancel or reschedule, and they're below that time cutoff, then what I say is, thank you so much for letting me know. I have canceled your appointment. This is a reminder that because you are canceling less than 24 hours, you are subjected to a no show fee for the appointment. Let's talk about rescheduling. When would be a good time? Or let's talk about rescheduling. I have X, Y, and Z available. And I remind them, I let them know, and I don't make it, I'm coming down on you. I don't try to make it from a place of you're in the wrong. I understand things happen. And I say that, like, thank you for letting me know. I understand things happen. As we have agreed upon, there is a fee for today. You will see that charge. I just wanted to make you aware of that. Let's talk about rescheduling. And what I have found is that if you package it that way, people understand for the most part that, hey, they're being understanding. They also have this fee in place. It is what it is. I did agree to that, and they're willing to reschedule. The majority of people are going to understand that and respect that this is what they agreed upon, and they're understanding. Now, you might have some people who are not okay with that, and they might be upset about that. And this is, again, just an opportunity not to fold and say, okay, just don't worry about it. But this is an opportunity to practice good boundary setting and to remind them what their policy is, provide them space to process any frustrations that they're having, understand and validate their experience, and then stay firm on your boundary. You have to enforce it. It all starts with you. I'm never going to expect a client to be like, oh, hey, yeah, I got to cancel. I remember I'm going to get charged this fee. I'm not mad about it. I don't have any feelings about it. We all good. I mean, if they're like that, great, but I'm not expecting them to know that. I'm not even expecting them to remember that, because a lot of people are signing paperwork as they start, or you're talking about attendance policy from the first appointment, and then it's a couple months later when they have to cancel or reschedule. And so I'm not even expecting them to fully remember this. I'm just expecting them to understand, hey, we did talk about this. We did agree upon it. It's in writing. It's verbally. You did say you were going to do this. This is just a reminder. Let's talk about rescheduling, and let's just keep it moving. So if you're struggling with this, I really encourage you to hear me when I say it starts with you. And if you have a policy, it's worth enforcing. But now, what if the client has missed so many appointments? Like the example I gave earlier, they're only attending maybe 40% of the appointments. They have been given lots of opportunities to reschedule, and they continue to change that appointment, cancel last minute, and we're clearly not adhering to the attendance policy. Then what do? If you find that you have a client that continues to not be able to adhere to the attendance policy for one reason or another, I really would get curious first as to what's the barrier or barriers happening for them, because we might need to change some things around and make it easier for them to follow through with the appointments that they're setting. And so if you have someone who is a single parent, or they frequently have car trouble, or they don't have money for gas, or things frequently come up because they don't have a sitter or whatever is like that, then my first suggestion would be really talk to them about what is a good time, what feels realistic and reasonable for them, And are there any accommodations that need to be met? Like maybe we should suggest meeting virtually, or if I see evening appointments, maybe that would be better when you have some more help for your kids, or maybe we need to decrease frequency of sessions and go to every other week because you don't seem to be attending all the appointments that you have. So I'm wondering if maybe you get to a place in between sessions where you're like, I feel like I'm good. And so we need to meet less frequently. Like I would first go to a place of curiosity with them about like, what seems to be the barrier or barriers to this, because I don't think that people are intentionally trying to not be respectful for the most part. I think it's oftentimes people are busy, they have other things come up, they forget things, they double book themselves, they overcommit, they've got kids, they've got families, they've got careers, they've got things going on that just life happens, right? Like things come up. So I don't think everyone's out there just to be disrespectful and not respect your time. But I do know that it can feel that way. We don't have an attendance policy, or someone is just continuing to miss appointments really frequently, or just continuing to like reschedule last minute. So first and foremost, I would get curious and see if you can figure out what barriers are happening and make any adjustments as you need to hopefully increase their attendance follow through. Now, if you've done this and they're still not attending the appointments, or still missing a lot or canceling last minute, then I would have a conversation with them specifically about your attendance policy and specifically about the agreement that they agreed upon and where you're noticing that things are really challenging for them. And really talk with them about like, hey, like this is what happens when you don't meet your appointments, or I feel like that we're not reaching your goals because you're only attending about 30% of your appointments. And so I feel like that our sessions are not able to really get to the root of things because so much happens if I don't see you but once a month. And is there a way that we could meet more frequently or make some changes, again from a place of curiosity, to make sure that you are adhering to this policy? But I would really have a conversation strictly about the attendance policy, which again I know might be hard but necessary, because we don't want to spring this on the client out of the blue and be like, oh well, you're not following this attendance policy, and so there's a problem, right? Like I want to be respectful of the fact that everyone has their own shit going on and that they really are trying to make an effort to come to therapy, and they're also having a lot of issues, and it may be issues that really need to be addressed in their life because it's impacting other areas of their life as well, right? Like is it time management, is it lack of follow through, is it other barriers or symptoms that are decreasing your ability to come or impacting your ability to come, right? Like I want to try to be understanding and empathetic in that way. And then let's say we've addressed barriers, we've made some changes, we've had a conversation about the attendance agreement, we've reiterated the policy, and then things are still not getting better. Then I really would look at this as, do we need to refer the client to someone else? Because if a client is not being committed to therapy, then it can quickly start to feel like our work is not being as effective as it could be, or I, as a therapist, feel ineffective, which I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but I have. And it's a terrible feeling, right? Like we all get into this profession for the most part because we want to help people. And so to feel like I'm not being effective or I'm not helping you can just not be a good feeling to have as a therapist. So I really would have a conversation specifically with them about like, listen, we've tried these things and this issue continues to happen. Like, if you're going to continue to miss appointments, then we might need to consider discharging you until you're in a place where you feel like you can commit to coming back to therapy and commit to coming on a regular basis, or we might need to refer you out because it seems like that your symptoms are not being managed at this level of care and you actually need to go to a higher level of care because this level of care isn't working. Or we might just say, listen, and sometimes our hands are tied about this if you work at an agency. We might be saying things like, unfortunately, the agency's policy is X, Y, or Z, and I'm going to have to administratively discharge you because you are in violation of this attendance agreement. And the agency specifically states if you miss this many appointments in this X amount of time, then we have to refer you out. And so if it comes to that, it is okay to refer someone out. Now, we do not abandon clients. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'm going to continue to support you in the meantime. I'm going to offer you referrals. And I'm also going to continue to move forward and say, listen, this is an issue we have to continue to address, and we have to address it in this way. And so I have seen agencies have pretty strict guidelines about this. I've seen some agencies have as little as like if you miss 3 appointments in like a year, like you're referred out. I don't operate that way personally. I'm way more lenient than that. And yet I also do feel like that there is a time where we have to intervene and say, like, listen, your attendance seems to be an issue. We need to talk about that. Or, hey, listen, this seems like this isn't like something that you're committed to right now, or it just seems like it's having to take a backseat to other things that are going on in life right now. Does it feel like we need to continue to try to make this work, or do I need to refer you to somebody else? Or do we need to kind of put a pause on therapy until whatever's going on in your life that's taking up a lot of time or making you miss appointments is in a different place? Maybe it's resolved, maybe you have more childcare, whatever the barriers are, and then restart again. And I have found that if you are just being honest and empathetic with the client and being like, hey, like, listen, I see you, and it's okay. Like, if we need to make some changes or whatever, I see clients actually oftentimes take that well. Obviously, that's not a blanket statement. Not everyone's going to take that well. But if you come from a place of like empathy and understanding, and people have genuine barriers that are causing them not to be able to come to therapy, a lot of times they either one, they kind of self-select themselves as being out and they just stop, rescheduling, or they stop, coming to appointments. But if you have someone that's continuing to try and it's just really a struggle, then I find that sometimes those conversations with clients can go really well because it leads you to a place of, let's just take this off your plate for right now. Or let's find you a therapist that's closer to you so that you can see them more frequently. Or let's get you someone who can see you virtually, or whatever it might be. And this actually can be really helpful for the client versus us just continuing to try to like push at this wall that's this massive barrier. But of course, you're going to have clients that aren't going to potentially like the fact that you have to adhere to this attendance policy, especially if you have an agency that's saying you need to discharge after a certain amount of time. And we hold space, we're empathetic, we're understanding, and then we stick to what the policy states. And if there's feelings about that, there's feelings about that, but we can't fix or change that. That it is what it is, and they're allowed to feel that, even if I don't agree with the way that you're looking at things, or I don't feel the same way. Like, they're allowed to have those feelings, and we don't need to do anything to try to like fix that or change that. Obviously, this is not an easy conversation to have for a lot of people, and I totally understand why. And also, if it's causing you to feel frustrated, if you're shying away from it, if you're feeling like the people aren't respecting your time, then it is so essential for you to feel better and you to show up better for clients. If you take some of the strategies that I talked about today and utilize them in your practice to be more intentional with talking about attendance, addressing attendance issues early on, really trying to help address barriers and problem solve with clients, meet them where they are, and then also have a plan if you notice that we're getting into a pattern where your attendance is really not great and it's impacting care, it's impacting therapy, because we also want to make sure that we are delivering good services, and I can only do that if clients show up. All right, guys, until next time. Bye.